Buchi më bu CHI. Bu CHI podcast.
Hello, Alice.
Hi, good morning, Mirminjes.
Yes, and welcome, and thank you for accepting the invitation to come to my podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
Very nice. Alice, I've got to know you through Twitter, through the magnificent post you've made about Albania, about different places. Well, first of all, I would like to apologize in advance because my English is not every time in the sufficient level to understand. So
don't worry.
Just feel free to correct me or
your
ask
English
anything.
is very good, and it's better than my Albanian, so it's fine.
Okay, I'll take that then. Yeah. It has come to my attention, and also like to a lot of the supporters of the podcast, that you show like a great interest in Albania. Let's say, like you have been there with protests, with demonstrations, talking for the people, sometimes to the people, against some government, and then sometimes maybe with a government, showing people a lot of reason why to stay, why to love Albania. Why is that? How come that a person like you shows a lot more interest than the average Albanian about their own country?
It's a good question. I think I don't always believe in, the idea of nationalism in terms of, I was born in this country, therefore I must love it and everything that happens here. I was born in England. I never felt at home there. I lived in Malta for 10 years. I was always a foreigner, an expat, whatever. I was never really at home there. I lived in Cyprus. I didn't like it. I came on holiday to Albania for 3 days and ended up extending my stay for a couple of weeks. And I had decided pretty early on that I wanted to live here. So I've made this country my home because I have a feeling that it's my home. And obviously, when you choose to stay somewhere, to live somewhere, I've chosen to raise my daughter here. I bought a small apartment. This is home now. You want things to be better. Obviously, there's lots of things I love about this country, but there are problems as well. There are problems in every country. But this is my home. And strangely, I'm in this position where I have visibility, and the things I write or say, people pick up on. And I think that, that's the way that I can try and change the things that I see are injustices or inequalities. So the reason why I'm vocal about Albania and I attend protests is because I live here. I want things to be better for myself, my daughter, everybody. And I think that I'm in a position where I have a voice and I have a duty to use it in a constructive way.
I understand. Well, there is this thing, like I live also abroad, and every time, or the first time we come back home to visit them, the family and the relatives would ask us, oh, where is it better to live, here or there? So that question, I think, is already answered since you chose it to be your home.
Yeah, we say in English, home is where your heart is. And as cheesy or as, cliche as that might sound, my heart is here. Life is not easy here. I have my own fair share of problems, even with the privileges that come as a foreigner. But when I travel abroad for work, which is quite often, within a day or two, I miss home, which is here. So that's where my heart is.
That is nice to hear. See, we have in the podcast, I focus more actually on the criticism. Like I do love to show like the beauties of Albania and the good things about Albania. But since the podcast is mostly for Albanians, I think it's more important to show where the problems lie. And
in fact, let me interject a second. In fact, I have my blog as well that I'm trying to start up again. But for me, because I am critical and because in my reporting, I but we deal a lot with the negatives, and I had to have this blog as an outlet for the positives as well, because otherwise I think if you just focus on all the negatives, you end up going a bit crazy. So for me, it was important to have both outlets. So,
Oh yeah, that's absolutely right. Where can the people follow this blog?
so it's called the Balkanista. I started it the first 2 months I was in Albania, and the idea was just because there was nothing in English online about Albania at the time, really, in terms of anything that wasn't negative. So I started it as sort of a blog just to document my experiences here. But it got very popular. I still get up to 40,000 visitors a month on the site, which is really cool. But also, like I said, for me, it helps to have that balance between the negative and the positive. I think it's important for people here to see that it's not all bad as well. There are good things that are present here.
Great. As you mentioned before that you've participated in protest and demonstration and different topics, I've seen your post on speaking and talking about women's problems and violence, which is a big problem, sadly, in Albania. But I think this is easy as a topic. It is a very difficult problem to solve. Maybe one of the most difficult, but it is easy to talk about it. What is difficult to talk about is the political problems and the plain question. Since I'm not some like school journalist, is like, aren't you afraid sometimes looking around what happens to like Albanian journalists and how specific mayors buy all the media and get no opposition whatsoever? Aren't you afraid they were gonna cancel some documents or threaten you?
Well, firstly, I have nothing to hide, so they can threaten what they like or documents or whatever. I've never accepted money from any political party, politician, or anyone affiliated with them. So I'm clean in that respect, so I'm not scared. In terms of threats, my colleague in Malta was murdered with a car bomb for investigating government corruption. So what happens in Albania is small time in comparison to that. Also, I think no, I'm not scared. Also, I mean, in the last 2 years or so, I've been editing mainly, so I haven't been writing as much as I would like to. It's something I really miss. So the heat has been off me, sort of in that kind of way. But no, I'm not scared. Because I believe in what I write in. I believe that I'm neutral and fair to everybody involved. I don't tend to touch things like organised crime because that's something that, I think I would be putting myself in the firing line with, although I'm happy to tackle corruption. In terms of journalism here, the problem goes far beyond just political interference. Much of the problem also lies with the owners of media here. Ethics amongst journalists as well, the lack of proper funding for journalists, like for journalism to be sustainable here is really, really tough, which has a huge impact on what people feel they can write. Also, I think there are issues with the law here as well, and crimes against journalists are not taken particularly seriously. So there's lots of reason to be scared, but no, it's not something that's ever really put me off. I did have an instance in 2019 where the government tried to take away my residence permit because of my critical reporting, and they smeared me in all the media. And this was scary because I was pregnant at the time and I was very sick with the pregnancy. I'd been in and out of hospital for most of it. And the stress caused by the situation endangered my life and my unborn daughter's life to the point where I nearly had to have her taken at 6 months. There was a couple of minutes, they were preparing me to go to the operating theatre. One of us would have died in that situation. So that is scary, but that was because I was carrying another life, I'm not really scared by what I do because I believe I'm doing the right thing as well. But in terms of pressure, I've been pressured by people from every side of the political spectrum in Albania, not just one. In fact, I probably had more pressure from opposition about writing about certain things, trying to push me to write about certain things. Whereas obviously the fallout of my criticism of the ruling party was my residence permit being taken away. But the pressure's there, but I often just ignore it and just get on with my job. But then I'm in a position of privilege in a way because I work for a media that's outside of Albania. I'm not reliant on my income from a corrupt media owner here who maybe has political or business interests. So that does give me a certain advantage. when it comes to how I report.
Well, let me say I'm very happy to hear that everything went well with you and your daughter. Thank God that you're both sound, let's say.
Yes.
That's very great news. As I wanted to address the elephant in the room before we move to like a couple of topics that I've written down. See, I would not say under fire or outrage, because I think those words are overrated, but I think you got a bad situation going on Twitter as soon as you went and to the podcast of the Prime Minister.
I think it was bad. I think most of the comments were quite positive. I think there was only a very small minority, and most of those were nameless, faceless Twitter accounts. So I wouldn't say it was a very negative reaction compared to some things I've written. I thought the reaction to my interview with Eddie Rama was actually overwhelmingly positive. It was only a small number of accounts that had anything negative to say, from what I saw anyway.
I see. So you personally think there was a positive thing to do, the right thing to do?
Absolutely, I'd do it again.
Yeah. You'll do it again?
Absolutely.
All right. See, I have this thing in my mind since Mark Zuckerberg, that no publicity is bad publicity. And our great emperor, Eddie Rama, has this thing of like taking everything for himself. I don't know, like a couple of years ago, he started with the media, telling like, oh, you are all fake media, you are all kazan, like a cauldron. Therefore, I'm going to open the ERTV and I'm going to give the news now, because that is what I do. And we've been 2 years on trying to construct a podcasting scene, me and my other fellow podcasters, which I say hi to. And there comes Eddie Rama and says, yeah, I just was in the UK and I had 3 minutes there to one of the biggest podcasts there. Therefore, I'm now going to do the podcast here and I'm going to be the greatest one. It's like sort of Trumpism, like I'm the greatest, I can do it the best way. And since there is no bad publicity, we are a little bit afraid that he's going to take everything, which he's shown the capability to.
But I mean, firstly, anyone has the right to start a podcast. Anyone. It doesn't matter who they are. Everybody has a right to do it. Secondly, there's no way the Prime Minister is going to take the lion's share of the audience. Like, I mean, most people are not listening to it. Most people are not even watching it. They're just watching the highlights that are published in the media or the commentary that goes along with it.
Well, with the first episode, it was on Apple Podcast and Spotify, the first
but what's the problem with that?
The problem with that is that I do not know if you saw the first episode, but it was just sad. There was nothing being said there except people like. But it's anyone's. I don't want to use certain words.
It's anyone's right to, and I'm taking him out of the equation here. Anyone has the right to start a podcast. Anyone.
Yeah, but that's a problem. I don't want to take him out of the equation because this is about him. Because of course anybody has the rights, but we also forget that everybody has his duties, and the biggest duty, the heaviest duty of them all, is his duty. And let's be honest, is Albania so fine that he finds the time to do the podcast when he talks to people who he bought, like the colonels there, and tell them that, oh, let's stay here, when the same people were 2 years ago crying in every media outlet in Albania saying this state is corrupt, we're going to go train in Ghana, we're going to train here because even these states have better conditions than Albania. And now the same people, which I did a small bit of, said, well, I do not understand why Albanians leave. Thank God you didn't say that. But you see, this is very sad.
That's for you to ask them, not me.
No. This is I'm not telling this to you. I'm just discussing.
Everybody has their reasons for. Firstly, anyone can start a podcast, whoever they want, on whatever topic. Secondly, in 2023, the way we consume media is changing. Everyone has a right to utilize them to the best of their abilities, whether it's in their free time, their personal time, whatever. It's their right. Thirdly, the reason for someone, and I'm sure this is going to be your next question, for someone appearing on such a podcast is up to the individual, and every individual have their own reasons, their own rationale for doing so. As for the first one, I didn't watch it, so I can't comment on what their reasons might have been, but I can explain my reasons for choosing to do so.
Yeah, sure. I would like those. But I just want to clarify that there is a reason why I didn't take your episode as an example, because I listened to both of them, and the episode with you was a very normal talk, while the other one was just them praising him like the Lord and Savior. So please.
But that's their right. This is the thing. You can say, "Oh, I want free speech," blah 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 blah, but then they can go on and say what they want. It's the job of journalists or analysts or commentators to then call that out, and to say, as you've just said you did, but hold on, 2 years ago you said this and now you're saying that. Everyone has the right to express these things, whether it's nonsense or propaganda or not. It's then the job of the media and people like yourself to act as a watchdog, to call out that nonsense when they see it. We can't say he should not be allowed to have a podcast. Because why not? Says who?
No, he should be allowed. Absolutely, yes.
Be critical, be analytical, and be fair when we comment on the content. That's all. In terms of my reasons, obviously you can imagine when I had the invitation. The idea of the invitation came a long time ago. And my first thought, as you can imagine, was why? Why me? Why would I want to do this? Why would I want to put myself in that position? And then I was asked to send all of the critical articles I've ever written about the Prime Minister. I've written many, and I've done my reporting that I do is fact-based and without opinion, but it's critical. My op-eds that I've written, reading back through some of them, I was like, Jesus, I went a bit, I've been extremely harsh. But there have been times where I've written op-eds and I've said, actually, do you know what? I like what you did. I think it was June 2022, when Albania there was the EU accession issue with North Macedonia, and they went to the Balkan summit in Brussels. And Rama gave a speech where he basically ripped the EU to shreds. And I wrote and I said, do you know what? He was right, because the EU likes to think it's better than the Western Balkans. And the Albania, North Macedonia are sort of subservient or lesser in some way. And do you know what? He went there, he didn't beg, and he said what needed to be said. Because I think that's fair. Does it mean I like him? No. Does it mean I'm paid by him? No. Does it mean I'm independent and I'm able to see, have independent thoughts, and I'm able to say, oh, actually, that's okay, but that's crap. This is what being independent's all about. Anyway, so I had to send him all of the articles where I'd been critical. And I thought, if I don't go through with this interview after writing all of this, and we're talking thousands of words, there's probably a book of my criticisms of Eddie Rama. If I don't address these, if I say no to the interview, it looks like I am maybe paid to write them, that it was just propaganda on my part. Maybe I can't defend them because it was just nonsense. Maybe I don't have any reasoning behind my words. Maybe I'm scared, I'm weak. There's a whole range of different scenarios that went through my head, that if I refused, I wrote them, I meant what I said, and as such, I should be able to defend them. And having an opportunity to do so was important for me, but also not to look weak and to show that, yes, I stand by what I wrote. This was very important. Secondly, as a journalist, we have to give right of reply. So many times I contact the Prime Minister's office and I ask for comments, and often I don't get a response. But having written thousands of words criticizing him, giving him the chance to write a reply is something that's required as a journalist. And my decision was not something I took lightly. I discussed it with the people I work with people who have a lot more experience in journalism than me. And I asked about the ethical implications of me accepting this interview. And this is one of the points that came up. You have a chance to give right of reply to the subject of someone you've criticized to the tune of thousands of words. You have to take it. Third reason, and this was the most important reason, and this is the reason why I do not regret it, and I would go and do it again tomorrow. The third reason is, in 2019, as I've discussed before, the government took away my residence permit when I was 6 months pregnant. The police leaked private information about me to the media, which then printed it. They refused to give me an official reason for the revocation, which meant that I couldn't appeal it. Media favourable to the government published lies about me for weeks and refused to take it down. This resulted in me collapsing in the street with stress, being shouted at in public, having to have a bodyguard essentially with me when I left the house. I collapsed in the street, I was taken to hospital, and I nearly lost my 6-month-old daughter. You, nor any other person who's criticised me, can have any understanding what that feels like, okay? You don't know what it feels like to walk down the street near your house today and have someone call you a Russian spy and have all that trauma coming back. Now, me being able to confront someone who may or may not have been behind it is extremely important to me. To be able to look them in the eye and say, I don't know whether you gave the order. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. Maybe you knew about what was going on, maybe you didn't. But you need to know the consequences of that decision. And being able to tell them what happened to me, how I suffered, how they almost killed me and my daughter. That is the most important reason for me doing that podcast. Because when I was able to do that, I'm not saying I certainly don't forgive. I don't forget. But it helps me close a chapter of my life because I was able to confront the head, even if he didn't give the order, the head of the person who oversees the institutions that nearly killed me and my daughter with their actions. Okay? Now, people don't want to understand that because they've never been in that situation.
See, like I didn't want it to come forth as a criticism because I personally don't think that I have the capability or I don't know, I do not have the right in this case also to criticize you. I just ask questions. I just want to know the reason.
I'm not
exactly
losing my temper at you. Just in general, the people think I was bought. Like for what? How much do you think someone like? Not
because we are a show like people. We like drama. We like loud things. If somebody says that's a Russian spy, we just feel so good having a Russian spy, even if we don't. Just somebody say like, "Oh my God, we are so interesting that a spy would be here," because that's what we think about. And see, the problem, or not the problem, but one thing that other people feel like it's, let's say, very good for you because you get the opportunity. And you got to say what you wanted to say and you confront it. But there are, for example, all the journalists that has criticized the prime minister and other people like the mayor or whatever else. And they didn't get an invitation nor they will get an invitation because yeah, of course, somebody would say, yeah, but it depends though how like fair you are and how good you write, and if you maintain your temper, if you stay respectful through the conversation, but also because this is a normal thing for Edi Rama to do and most of the Albanian people. See, I think we as the whole Balkans, we have an inferiority complex. We think that the Northern Europeans, like the Western Europeans, are better than us. Therefore, everybody who comes from outside to us, we will treat them better than we treat ourselves. This is very great for anybody who comes, and I'm for that.
But I think you're making a false comparison here because while firstly I agree there is this people put foreigners here on a pedestal, which is completely wrong, and I don't agree with it. But I think there's a bit of a false comparison here because it's not just that I'm a critical journalist. My words are translated into Albanian, yes, but I am the main one who's writing in the English language internationally. I'm not just reporting locally. You know, I'm published in multiple countries in multiple languages around Europe. Secondly, I'm known because of my blog as well, which 40,000 visitors, 60,000 at the peak a month is nothing, is higher than some of the news sites here. You know, this is quite...
Sure. That's how I know you from also.
Yeah. Thirdly, because of, I do activism work, not as much as I used to, but I'm active in society in many, many ways. And there are things that I'm active in that I don't need to talk about here because I prefer to keep certain things to myself and just do them myself under the radar. Also, because I have a familial connection with Albania through my uncle, who came here in the late 1800s and painted and wrote about Albania. He's a member of my family, Edward Lear. So I have this connection as well. Also, I am someone who has chosen to live here. There is a very interesting dynamic with the UK at the moment in terms of the UK being horrific to Albania and about Albania. And this was an interesting aspect as well. So it's not just, you can't say, oh yeah, but there's lots of Albanian journalists that would like an invite as well. I'm not responsible for that. He can't invite every single journalist in Albania on there. But what I'm saying is that I assume the reason for my my invitation is because I'm not just a journalist. I'm not just someone who criticizes him, but there are other aspects of what I do and have done which were of interest as well, that made me an interesting candidate. Now, I still think it's really weird because I don't consider myself as someone like the public person label, or it bothers me a bit, you know, I find it weird. So I'm not trying to sound like I'm being arrogant or something.
I think you're being a little bit modest, though. Like, you are an interesting person because you have been in a lot of other shows, because I've followed you. So.
People are curious. People are curious, you know? So this is part of it as well. So it's not like they invited me and have ignored every other Albanian journalist. It's no, I'm a journalist, but I'm also XYZ other things as well.
I see. Well, I take that back then, and then there was like a false or like not a right comparison.
But there are problems with Rama and the government in the way that they engage with Albanian journalists. But there are also problems with the way that journalists engage with the government here. We can't pretend that every media is fair and
absolutely
accurate, you know. So these issues work both ways. But yeah, I don't think you can compare me as a person of interest to, that's what I'm trying to say.
In my opinion, I'm a very radical thinking person. I think we have on top exactly whom we deserve. They are the mirror of us. It's not like we are any better. If we were better, they would have been better. We're not better, so they are not better. Talking about the UK, I don't know if I thought you were Welsh, but you seem
I'm
to
half
be
Welsh.
English. Okay, I don't know how big you are on all the Brexit thing or the UK, but you mentioned the situation in the UK now towards the Albanians, and although it is a fact that there are a lot of young people my age or younger or older that going there for the sole purpose to engage in mild criminal activities, I would say, because there is more to that than just growing a little bit of weed and whatever. But do you think that the UK sometimes misses the overlordship of the world, when back in the time where they could oppress everybody and nobody would know anything about it?
One of I have, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier. I feel no loyalty to my country just because I was born there. I think the way that the UK government behaves is, even if you look at their immigration sort of procedures, it's like, guys, you're not that special. Why are you making it so difficult? Like, this is unnecessary. The way they treat people in terms of immigration is horrific. And then you have to think, well, you know, a couple of 100 years ago, you were just storming into people's countries and taking over. But perhaps the half Welsh and the part Irish part of me are particularly anti-English. Because
that explains a lot then.
They've taken our language, our land, our culture. My father is Welsh, and at school he was beaten for speaking Welsh and speaking with a Welsh accent, and told, you'll never get a real job if you talk like that. And this was my father's 68, so it's not that long ago. But also, I think we have to remember, and this is a point that the government here actually raised, but I had also said it before, so I want to be clear, I'm not parroting the government line, but the anti-Albanian rhetoric that we have in the UK at the moment comes mainly because it's something that's good for Conservative voters. So we had Johnson leaving, Prime Minister Boris Johnson leaving. We had the nightmare that was Liz Truss. She lasted like 60 days. And then Rishi Sunak. Now, during that time, the Conservative Party, with the right, their right wing, they had the lowest polling popularity in their history during that time. So if there had been a general election, they would have lost by a landslide. Now, with the right in England, in the UK, the number one way to galvanize voters is by talking about immigration. I was in the UK when it was the Polish. The Polish are invading. They're all going to, rape your daughters and mug your grandmas. And then it was the Romanians, and it certainly.
And then it was the Bulgarians. It's always like a sacrifice to the one-eyed god of the sun,
Yes.
so they can just maintain the power.
And the fact that Albanians are a Muslim country, which whatever,
right,
makes it even worse, because the other thing that the Conservatives hate, apart from migration, is Muslims. So this was a way for them to pick an enemy, make a huge fuss around it, and then defeat the enemy. Do you see what I mean? So I feel that it wasn't so much personal. Albania was the scapegoat, basically. But yeah, it's all based in colonialism and this sense of superiority that the British institution, the government, etc., think that they have. And it makes me ashamed.
See, I believe that my political leanings are right.
Mm-hmm.
But in no particular way I feel the need to discriminate or be mildly racist. Although I don't like to use that word as often now, because it's overused. And my partner is, by the way, a Scottish girl, so I also have a little bit of clashing going on with the UK. The details, I think, are also very interesting, because both of those individuals who were very loud, except Nigel Farage, but yet again, it's Nigel Farage. You would expect that from him. But the Suella Braverman and Rishi Sunak are immigrants. To be honest, they are the second generation, let's say, which is still immigrants. By all the Albanian tradition, you need 7 generations to be something else. So by that definition, they are immigrants. I do not know how spineless a person should be to come from a similar background and then say, this is an invasion. Where, first of all, if 1,000 or 10,000 Albanians can invade the UK, then maybe UK deserves to be invaded. If it is so weak to feel threatened from 10,000 Albanians. And I take it at heart, because well, what if the mother of my partner sees that? What would she think? Oh my God, maybe he is a drug dealer. Maybe he is aggressive. Maybe he beats women. Maybe he will lock my daughter in and she will never get out again. I am such a small person in that, and I do not have also the contact every day to explain to people yeah, but no, because no, this is all like a thriller book. This is like Harry Potter. Even Harry Potter is more real than this.
I think, going back to your first point, we have to accept that the political spectrum is different in different countries. So we were having this conversation at work the other day, where I work with colleagues from all over Europe, and we were trying to, because we've got the European elections coming up next year, and we were trying to place parties from across Europe on the political spectrum. And it's so hard, because an Italian's definition of right wing is very different to maybe a Spanish definition of right wing. And we were having huge debates because we couldn't figure out where people were supposed to go. So, for example, you say you're right, more right. I'm centre, maybe left leaning a bit, but definitely right, more right in some ways. But this it's very comparing, for example, the British right wing to the Albanian right wing is problematic because there are big variations. Each political ideology in each country has developed to its own challenges, its own problems, its own systems. But when I'm talking about the Conservative Party in the UK and how they've behaved, they're not necessarily pandering to the sort of right-wing ideology. They're pandering to something that they know divides people and galvanizes people and gets clicks and makes people angry and makes people upset, but also something which can be used to brainwash people in a way. This is like the clickbait of the political world. And this is really sad because it moves away from what the actual ideology might be, and it's just a tool to divide, to galvanize, and to get votes, which is a disservice to the electorate itself, because the Conservative Party are right, but they have been borrowing a rhetoric from the extreme right, which is not what people signed up for.
Which is obviously wrong in 2023. That is so obvious to recognize.
Yeah. And, I have friends, Albanian friends in the UK whose kids were like coming home from school saying my friends won't play with me because I'm Albanian, and I was like, this is horrific. This is horrific. What have those kids done to deserve that? Like, I did actually see something on Twitter. It was a conversation about, the Albanians are invading the UK, and someone commented, well, at least if they do invade, at least the food will get better. And the coffee, I'm sure, as well.
And let's talk a little bit society, away from the politics, because it is important, but it gets just boring after a while, because we know they just want to be elected in this is all a big reality show.
Mm-hmm.
So, Britain, what is a specific thing that you do not like about society in Britain, generally speaking?
Okay, this is difficult. Like, I mean, I lived I left the UK when I was like 21, so it's been a very long time since I've lived there. But I never really felt at home there, One of the things so there's two things that come to mind instantly. The first is the class system in the UK. So you have the upper class, the monarchy, the sirs, lords, ladies, etc., the upper middle class, the working class, etc. But okay, I'll tell you a story. When I was about 16, I was at the beach in Cornwall, where I grew up, and it's a resort, a town that was really popular with rich kids from private schools up in London, but really, schools that cost like 50,000-60,000 a year. Oof. And we were there, drinking cider on the beach or whatever you do. And these boys came along and they were chatting to us, and one of the first questions was, so what school did you go to? And
I love the accent.
We said the school, I went to a private school for 1 year and I hated it, and I refused to go again. I went to the local state school, and I said, and they were just sort of like, good. And left, because I mean, I could have been the most beautiful girl in the world, I could have been the most interesting person, but because I didn't go to the right school. And this happened when I went to university as well. It was, which school did you go to? Where did your parents go to school? It's used as a status thing, and I hate this. It also happens in the workplace. So it doesn't matter, in lots of places, in lots of industries, like journalism is one of the main ones where this has been identified. It doesn't matter much about your grades or even what you studied. It can come down to where you went to school, if it was a fancy enough school, because that shows your status, your wealth, and ultimately your importance. And this is huge. And there's very little crossover in friendship groups, relationships between these classes in the UK. There's a huge amount of snobbery. And this I really don't like. The second thing I don't like about society in the UK is it's not a safe country. It's not safe. From when I was a kid.
Wow. I think you may be one of the very few people to admit that.
Yeah, it's not. I remember my mum from when I can remember, would never let me out of her sight, not even for a second. In the supermarket, in the street, she would hold my hand. I was not allowed to, you have from a young age drummed into you, don't talk to strangers, don't do this, don't do that. My parents had a password for me. So, for example, if they were in a car crash and were in hospital, anyone coming to pick me up would have to say the password, and I wouldn't go with that person unless they said there were all these things in place, and I grew up in a relatively safe area. But I remember someone tried to grab me, someone tried to snatch me from my mum when I was about 4 years old. This is something that's a big problem in the UK. If you read the British media, every day, every week, a kid's been kidnapped, a woman's been raped. You can't run as a woman in the park in the morning, in the evening by yourself. It's a dangerous country. I lived in Bristol for 3 or 4 years. I was mugged twice, once at knife point. But this is not something exceptional. This is the norm. It's part and parcel of living in these big cities, I lived in a nice house and stuff, but there was a drug dealer who kept his crack in a little cubby hole behind my garden gate, and I couldn't do anything about it. I don't want to get stabbed or shot. So you get on with it. And this is a reality of living in the UK. It's not safe. I have a daughter. I'd be scared. I'd be really worried.
It is a very big passive compliment for a British person to say, I'm going to live with my daughter in Albania because it's safer than the UK.
It's safe. So. Okay. If someone gets shot in a cafe, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, this is terrible. It's awful. It's bad. But do you know what goes on in London, in Birmingham, in Liverpool, in Bristol, in Manchester on a daily basis? Like, I've seen people shot in the street outside my house in England. Yeah, there are problems with organised crime here. It is a big problem. But if I go to the shop, like I go in the morning, sometimes I get up for work at 4:35 in the morning, and sometimes I go and I take a coffee from the bakery, 10-minute walk away. I'm not going to get raped, but I wouldn't be able to do that in England. I wouldn't be able to leave my house like that in England. Here I can.
I think that is a little bit of our ignorance helping us being safer, because most of the places we have this thing we discussed with the guys when we were having a couple of pints, like, yeah, you would think a lot of times before doing something like that, because the family of those people would follow you for life if you just dare to do something like that.
I was in Brussels last week and I was having a drink with some colleagues, and I said, right, I'm going to go now. I'm going to walk back to the hotel. It was about 10 o'clock at night. And they were like, where's your hotel? I was like, oh, it's like half an hour walk away. And they were like, are you crazy? You can't walk to your hotel 10 o'clock at night? Like, are you insane? And I don't think there's anywhere in Tirana that I would not walk at night. I would be careful in a couple of places, maybe, but I don't think there's anywhere I wouldn't walk.
Well, I mean, you should be careful of the stray dogs. That's the only thing that is going on over there. But
like, even with my daughter, if I go to a coffee shop or I take her to a playground, or, I like the way that everybody takes care of, in a way, like they love kids, they look out for them. If she trips over and falls over, 20 people stand up and go, oh, is she okay? This is completely different from the UK. And I live here, I'm on my own with my daughter, and to feel that I'm safe here in public, obviously I'm still careful because you never know, but to feel that I'm safe in public, that my daughter is safer here, it's a huge benefit for me.
Yeah. See, you have a little kid. My brother has a little kid. I have a little nephew that is going like in pre-kindergarten thing, and that is one of the biggest problems, because I'm very happy for you that you found home there and you see yourself raising your kid there. And I do not know if you have her in a public institution or a private institution, but this is also a very big problem in Albania. And like we see this moth of a mayor, as the memes call him, that showing like 40 schools, 400 schools, and this and that, and yet again there are like average 5 more preschool institutions that are private and not registered, and there are public ones. And in this institution, you cannot do anything to them because they can just close the door and they do not exist anymore. Something happens to your kid because they have eaten something bad, they got fed something they shouldn't have been fed. You cannot follow these people. You have to find these people, which they can just pack a second and go.
Yes. Education is a concern for me here for her. At the moment, she goes to it's a private school, but she learns in Albanian. It's the reason I chose it is because my daughter is very energetic. She's very, I don't know. I have ADHD, so I don't know if my daughter has it or not. I assume you know what that is.
Do you believe in that? I think we're just people who like to do a lot of things.
No, it's a neurological condition. It's not a mental illness or it's a neurological condition which has impacted me from when I was, I think attention was drawn to it when I was 6 years old. So no, it's not a fad. You can actually, I don't think they have the equipment in Albania to do it, but you can actually look at the brain of someone with ADHD and someone without, and there are significant differences. So
right.
But anyway, my daughter, whether you believe in ADHD or not, my daughter's really, really, really active. She's really smart. She has difficulty focusing. She doesn't like large groups of people. She was a bit shy, sort of, yeah. And she struggled in a larger class and she was ending up withdrawing herself from the activities and things. So she's in this private school for now. It's not one of the fancy ones. I think it's ridiculous. You have these massive, posh kindergartens that charge €600 a month. It's insane. Because I wanted her to be in a smaller class at first to see whether it's just an age thing or whether she needs a bit of extra support with her learning. I really want her to go to a state school. I have two near me where I live. I went to a state school. I would like her to go to a state school. But if she needs additional assistance with learning, then I'll have to figure out how that can be addressed in a state institution. Do you know what bothers me though? When the politicians of this country send their children to the country's most expensive private schools. And it's not just Albania, they do it.
Oh, absolutely.
They do it in the UK as well. Like you go on television and talk about how great the education system is, but you're sending your kid to a school which is 10 times the cost of the average person's salary. Like, I can't swear.
Yeah, well, that's the hypocrisy. But I think that is our responsibility, my responsibility, and the responsibility of the people to point that out and hold them responsible for that hypocrisy. Talked about Britain, but we should talk about Albania in the same manner as well. Like, what is something in the Albanian society that really bothers you? And I would love you to be like as plain as possible, as direct as possible.
There's a few things. The judgment, let's put it under one umbrella, the judgment of women. I have tattoos. I had a woman spit at me in the street once because of them. People comment, they judge, and it's like, actually in the north of Albania, it was a big tradition to have tattoos on the hands and the arms and things like that. So actually you're full of, I'm not going to swear on your podcast.
You should. It's you can say whatever you like.
But if an Albanian man has a tattoo, that's fine. No problem. No one says a word. But how dare I have a picture of some flowers on my arm, which includes some Albanian flowers and that were beautifully drawn. That obviously means I'm a massive hussy and a whore. And also, I'm a single parent. As I mentioned on the podcast, one bank turned me down for credit based solely on the fact that I was unmarried, which was insane. I got credit elsewhere because anyway. But then I see, I have friends who are single mothers and I see how they struggle, and I've seen and heard the way people might talk about them and, oh, she's never going to find a husband because who wants that, and the fact that women should be quiet and virginal and be in the kitchen. And there's just a lot of double standards, that I find in society which are applied to women and men. But again, this happens everywhere. But I live here, so I notice how it impacts me. These little microaggressions, if you will. I mean, it doesn't destroy my day or anything, but it it annoys me. And one of the most annoying things is that often it can be women that are saying these things as well. Like my daughter is, how do I put it? She's cuddly, you know, she's a chubby, cute, like a chofta. I had 2 incidents which made me really, really angry. One neighbor kept calling her fat. And I was like, but she's 3 years old. Like, why are you here? But she's fat. She's fat. Why is she eating so much? She should, like, please just get out of my...
Well, that's new, because when I grew up, in our generation, if you weren't fat, like literally fat, you weren't healthy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in Albanian, the word for healthy and fat is the same word.
Yes. Yeah.
Exactly.
But it was even, you know, after I had birth, I think it was two weeks after I gave birth, this neighbor came up to me and she grabbed my stomach and was like, when are you going to get rid of this? And I was like, I just birthed a human, like, back the fuck off.
Oh, those people are... See, I think we are just a little bit ignorant, and like, maybe like a few times, but not the majority, but a few times it also comes from a good point, but people are so frustrated and they do not know how to express it. Take my example, for example. I do not like tattoos overall. Mm-hmm. But I do not feel any like urge to just go and talk to somebody about it. Like, I don't like tattoos. I'm not getting a tattoo.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
That's it.
Yeah, I don't like pink hair, but if you want to dye your hair pink, go nuts. Like, it doesn't impact my life in any way. The second incident was, again, with my daughter. She was, when I was living in my previous apartment, and it was summer. She was playing with water in the garden. She didn't have any clothes on because she was 2.5. And the neighbor upstairs was telling her, Turp, you know, put your clothes on. Why are you showing off? Like, and I'm like, she's 2.5.
Alice, you can be sure that that exact same person had her niece or her daughter in the Albanian beaches in the same age, fully naked. So that is just... See, that is like the police. That thing is in Germany like a very major thing. That ruins my day here on a daily basis. People who just are like the police people who just point things out. Like, just, you know, fucking meetings, for God's sake. Like, why are you doing this?
If it upsets you, look ahead. Don't look down, you know? But it was what annoyed me. I was like, she's 2.5. Okay, she doesn't understand. But why should she be ashamed to play in her own garden naked? Like, I don't.
No, she shouldn't. By no stretch of imagination, she shouldn't. You should do whatever she wants, or whatever you want in that case.
Had it been a little boy, there would have been no mention of the word tur.
No, absolutely not. They would say like, "Oh, tahangsa," you know, like the overly sexual jokes about little boys that Albanians have, which is, I mean, hilarious to some degree, but sometimes people find that disturbing, and it is. I could see that.
So this is my only issue, you know, and it's not a big one. And like I said, it's an issue that you have in the UK, that you have in Malta, where I lived before. You know, this issue is present in many places, in my view. So,
see, I think one of our greatest quality is the public thing that you mentioned before. Like, if I see it here, something will happen in the public and nobody bats an eye. Like, the world just continue existing, while in Albania, people, like, that is, you can see that in the homeless situation in Albanians. Like, it is worse for gypsies. I admit that we have a big problem of not supporting them, but usually you do not find as many homeless people in Albania, because that it's not possible. While in the UK or here in Germany, in Berlin, like, good God, like, that's a very big thing. And the problem that you mentioned before, I also have this feeling, because I judge Germany and Britain more harshly than I judge Albania, because sadly I do not expect as much from Albania, because we do not have a history of good governments and like good whatever. But Britain, in the other side, is like a pillar of
we've got
democracy,
years of experience.
Exactly. So I just think like a lot of problems that you mentioned before, they come of people having it too good for a long time and having no drive, generally not being supportive, following the short dopamine and not like larger goals and stuff like that, which we also do. Like, we also have a lot of people who like stay in the coffee places and like complain the whole day. We have that also.
But then they don't want to do anything. If you give them a suggestion, why don't you try this or this or this or this? They, oh, no.
No, but how dare you, Bjorn? Because you are in Berlin, of course you would say that. You're there, so you don't know how it is here. Like, I haven't...
Take responsibility for your own life and do something about it. I hear it a lot. I'm not saying it's everybody, but I sit in the coffee and I hear blah, 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 and I'm just sat there like, you're not helping yourself either.
It bothers me. It bothers me. Even if they make it hard for you, even if the politics makes it hard for you, you can still go and do something instead of doing nothing. Even if you paid like 300,000 lex, it's better than 0 lex. So
you are the only person who can do something to change your life. Of course, you need help from the government in terms of the environment that's created around you, but the only person that can change your direction is you. You can't just sit there in a coffee shop and expect 1,000 euros a month, 2,000 euros a month to land in your lap. You have to get out there and do something. And I know I'm privileged, etc., but I left home at 17. I paid my own way through school, college and university. I've been expelled from college. I got into other colleges. There have been times in my life when I was younger that I didn't have anywhere to sleep. Then I had to stay with friends. And I didn't have money and I had to rely on friends, Up until 6 or 7 years ago, I hadn't saved a single penny and I was living paycheck to paycheck, and only through pulling my head out of and making responsible decisions. And I've worked. Life wasn't handed to me on a plate. Yes, I came from the UK, but I found school really difficult. I struggled. As I said, I got expelled. I got suspended. I never knew what I wanted to do with my life. I was working in a law firm. I hated it. I became really depressed. I was drinking too much. And I remember sitting on the bus one day, feeling hungover, depressed, miserable, miserable, deep, empty. And thinking, is this what the next 40 years of my life are going to be like? Living paycheck to paycheck, dreading going into work, being miserable, depressed, upset, hating my colleagues. No, I don't want it to be like this. So I changed it. And it's been really hard. I do have privilege, but it's not like my parents paid for me to go to university. They paid for my accommodation. They paid for this, that, or that I've got a trust fund or everything's been handed to me on a plate. Everything I have where I am now has come from me having nothing at some point. Nothing. Being homeless at one point. So you're the only person that can make that change.
If I may go there, because I've seen also interviews with you on this afternoon shows, like when you're talking the one losing the weight and quitting smoking, and now you just said like quitting alcohol, which is a very bad thing. Like I think in Britain you have like an epidemic of alcoholism, which is glorified into a manner like I like to drink. Like believe me, when I start drinking, I would like to drink until I cannot breathe anymore and just sing all the time. But I don't do that daily, or nor do I do that like every time I have to go out, do I have to drink. In Britain, this is so glorified, while the first thing that people think about is drinking. I would, and because like the weight loss, smoking for me also personally, I've quit like 4 times, but no, really, because I've returned to it. These are like 3 things with especially the youth everywhere, I would assume, struggle these days a lot. In Albania, a little bit more with the smoking than with the drinking.
Yeah.
Do you have like anything to explain, or like a tip for people like how to do these things?
It's hard because I was I drank way too much for way too long, and I didn't take care of what I was eating, and I wasn't active enough, and it damaged my health, and I had a doctor tell me, you are 33 years old. If you you should be on medication today for your heart, for your blood pressure. Your liver's fucked. Your kidneys are not great. Your cholesterol's too high. He was like, you're in your early 30s, but you're going to end up killing yourself. Like, you're going to have a stroke. This is crazy. And that scared me, and I went for these tests and they looked at my liver and everything, and I could see what was wrong. And I don't know, I have a daughter and I have a job that I love, and I realized that this was not compatible with my responsibilities and what I like doing. And it scared me into making a change. But then for me, it became, and listen, smoking, I've smoked again and I'll stop again and I'll smoke again. This is the hardest one. Drinking, I stopped. Now I had a glass of Prosecco 2 days ago, but that's opposed to 2 bottles that I might have drunk before. So, but then what I began to understand is that exercise, like regular exercise, and I'm talking not just walking down the street instead of getting in the car. Regular exercise and eating well. If you do it consistently, like the impact it has on you mentally, physically is insane. Like you feel like a completely different person. Like I use exercise as a way of meditating, as sort of therapy. Like the high I get after running or doing a good gym session or something is way more than any high I could get from anything else. But it's a form of self-care. And I don't think in society we really prioritize ourselves in this way. We think of exercise as a chore, as something not very nice to do, or healthy eating, or it's boring, you know. But if you don't take care of your body and what you put in your body, how can you do the other things you want to do? How can you work properly? How can you spend time with your family? How can you go and do fun things if you're not taking care of the thing that you need to do in order to do that? And your mental health as well. Again, I think too many of us neglect and I'm not saying mental health to sound sort of airy-fairy, but you have to keep your mind active. You have to keep yourself happy. And the way you do this is through taking care of what you eat and how you exercise. It's a mentality shift. You might think, oh, eating a pizza is going to make me happy. It might make you nice to eat it, but you'll feel like crap afterwards. If you change your lifestyle for a week, then you will see a huge benefit. I don't know. It's a mentality thing that we need to learn to take care of ourselves better.
See, Alex, there is this problem, for example, which is clearly not a big problem yet in Albania, because clearly, as you mentioned before, we find it very easy to bully people for no reason whatsoever. But here in Germany and the UK, absolutely, is this glorifying of people being fat. And I'm not trying neither to bully or to be correct. It's fat.
Yes.
Those people are sick. Those people are diabetical. I am also not in my greatest shape. I need to go exercise right now. Right after talking to you, I need to go because I'm also not in my greatest shape. But there is a difference of not telling people you should do this, you should do that. And there is another thing, putting them on billboards with this, I don't know, like your body, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Of course, it is your body. Doing whatever you want can also mean you can hang yourself if you want to and commit suicide. That is also your body. But is it the right thing to do? I don't think so. And you have it all on the like the magazines here. I wasn't to.
We have this on the flip side as well. You know, you have skinny models, skinny people on Instagram. You have people editing their photos to make themselves look thinner. You have people having surgery to suck the fat out. This is not normal either. We need to stop glorifying the extremes. When I decided to change my lifestyle, I was overweight, but my motivation was not to be, I wasn't fixed in my head. I want to be skinny, because like even now, I have people saying, oh, well, you're too skinny. You're too skinny. Like, fuck off. You were telling me I was too fat a year and a half ago. Like,
because people always have something to say.
Yeah. And so my motivation has never been to be skinny. And this is the problem as well. We are focusing on the kilos, what we look like in a photo, what dress size we fit into. And this goes for skinny and the fat as well. Whereas we should be focusing on being healthy. So that means if you are eating the right amount of calories, or the right amount of from the right food groups, and you're exercising the right amount, and you're drinking enough water, and you're not drinking too much alcohol, your weight will reach what it should be, you know, and that's right for you. And that is what we should be glorifying, being healthy. Not, there may be cases where someone looks overweight, but actually they're not too unhealthy, you know, we don't know, but
they are just a little bit fluffy, I say.
Yeah, cuddly. it's this obsession with you are fat, you are wanting to categorize people. We should be, hello, my cat had something to say about that. You're not fat, you're just fluffy. Okay.
Yeah.
We need to focus on being healthy. So things like models, for example, check their BMI. And then based on that, you should decide whether you work with them or not whether they fit into a size 6 or a size 26 pair of jeans.
See, I criticize, for example, because of the position I am, and I've come a lot of under fire because people like to also name me a lot of things, which I've understood by the moment that it is what we said before, that they will always have something to say. I usually criticize males on how they go about their daily lives by glorifying these models, knowing fully well that they have more plastic than the Pacific Ocean in them, which I actually actively attack because it's their body, but I do not have to praise that as a standard of beauty if it is made. Like, let's just paint something there and just put that as a thing. But also on the way how they speak toward women, because we have this problem in Albania. Like, they would say something to a person who doesn't give them attention. And my idea is like, just let it go. Just like, next, just skip it. She doesn't like you, she doesn't like you. What can you do? It's not like she's going to like you because you're going to say something worse. So just let it go. But on the other side, I see this, I've done a monologue after long time ago, like 2 years ago. I think that we have this sponge society. It's like a sponge. When you wash dishes, we always take like the dirt. Whatever comes from the West, we always take, first thing we take is like this these idiotic ideas. And it's the growing community right now. We're saying like, oh, don't be like, don't fat shame and fat thing. First of all, if you have a, if you have a relationship with a person, fat shaming works to some degree. If that is a person you do not know, hands off. It's not your problem. It's not, just like, don't even start with it. And we're starting like glorifying these things. It's not like, yes, the models are very skinny. Those are unhealthy also. But those
considered the same as people who are overweight. Both are as bad as each other. Exactly.
And those models, for example, will do that for a time, and then they will go on with their lives, right? I think is a tick bit harder if you are overweight and have damaged your heart for a very long time. You need it's harder to lose a massive amount of weight. And I have in my family, my close family, I have people who have overweight. Like, but this is not me trying to like pinpoint fingers.
The model has an eating disorder if she's anorexic or bulimic, which is often the case. Even if it doesn't start out as that, it becomes one. I have a very good friend I went to school with, just as an example. She is my age. She's had anorexia since she was 14. She's infertile. She has osteoporosis. Her bones are basically crumbling. And that is the consequence of her. And she cannot eat. She can't eat. She's nearly died multiple times. You know, both extremes are as bad as each other. And there are long-lasting health consequences for both, which are as severe, but they are treated differently. Skinny models are often are shamed in a way. You know, let's not have so many skinny women on the catwalk. And then they bring out overweight models, which is just as bad because you're destroying your heart, your joints, your liver, so we need to focus on being healthy instead.
Starting with our kids when I will have some. Mm-hmm. I don't have any yet, but
my daughter, as an example, my daughter, she says, "Mummy, can I come to the gym with you?" Or "Mummy, I can't wait to run in a marathon like you." Or she'll go and take an apple from the fridge and she'll like eat this, and she'll say, "Oh, I'm eating this because it'll make me big and strong." Like, this is good. I don't keep junk food in the house. When she's out of the house, she can eat what she wants within reason, but I don't keep it at home. We have to teach them a healthy attitude. There's no such thing as bad food, but everything has to be in moderation.
No, I think even if I really do believe in the philosophical will that even when she goes out of the house, she will have this 1 year, 2 years when she will be a rebel and do exactly the opposite you said, but then she will return back there if she has a strong basis. Alice, as a last topic, I wanted to also generally talk about Albanian youth in specific, because for my podcast, I do not believe that we have any other hope but the youth. I think my parents' generation have failed miserably of doing something for us. I mean, my father specifically, my mother, had been successful individually because they were workers and they have two boys, both like a lawyer and an engineer, which is a high achievement. But they have betrayed us, politically speaking. They have betrayed us because they didn't vote who they needed to vote. They didn't to go to the streets to protest and demonstrate for our future. They worked. They didn't have any problems working like animals, actively damaging their bodies, so they could spare some money, so we could study and we could have a better life. But not the activism, not the political critical thinking. They didn't do that. So my only hope now is the youth, and I would like to have your opinion on like how do you find the Albanian youth?
Disillusioned. But you know what? And it's interesting you talk about your parents. They're products of a system which banned everything you are saying they didn't do. And I am a big believer that what happened during communism and how society was forcibly divided and people were pitted against each other and their rights were curtailed and all the horrific things that happened. This has never been dealt with on a personal level, a familial level, a community level, or a state level. It's never been resolved, what's happened. We still don't know where 6,000 plus people who disappeared are. There's been no formal apology. There's no memorial. There's no reconciliation. And I think a lot of the bitterness and the anger and the frustration and the trauma of what happened has been passed down from those who lived through it to the next generation, to the next generation, to the next generation. And they're not aware of it necessarily. And this younger generation, they've inherited all of this, accumulated anger and frustration. They're not quite sure why they feel it. They feel a disconnect with their country, with their family, with their community. They see this world on social media that's all glittery and shiny and they want to be a part of it. And they don't think anything's going to change here because why would they? Because all the politicians in power are pushing 60 and are remnants in some way of what went before. Any new forces, political force, are up against it structurally to even get a foot in the door or a chance of governing the country. I don't blame them for feeling disillusioned. Like if you grow up in a house where there is violence or abuse, even if you're too young to really understand what's happening, you feel the atmosphere, you absorb it, you feel that sort of trauma, you want to get away from it. And I think that's what is happening to the youth here as well. They don't see any future, but they don't have anyone to put their future in, and they don't think that they are capable of changing it because of the way the system works or doesn't work, as the case may be. And this is really sad because I was thinking if the main three political leaders had a heart attack tomorrow, who would, like, I struggle to even remember who's running as the candidate mayor. And I'm a journalist. I keep forgetting who's running as the candidate for mayor of Tirana for the opposition. Because they're just not, it's not a force,
Because they're just clowns.
There's no viable alternative. But yeah, this disillusion, it's multifaceted. The reason they don't want to engage, but also I think there's a lot of people that want to stay in Albania. They would love to have a future here, but they're like, I've got one life. Do I risk it when I could go to Germany and do this, or I could go to the UK or Switzerland or whatever? And I don't blame them for that.
Meeting the conditions, I'm going to return directly, but conditions are not met. Not even halfway through. No. Because it's okay for me to I'm going to get less money, but I will have the same standard of life. No. If I would to return in Tirana just now, I will have, the only positive I would have in Tirana right now is just paying my being in the capital of my home country, because I'm originally from Berat and from Tirana. And the only thing is like me having my family close to me. Because nothing else, like I would have a family there, which I wouldn't be able to support fully financially as I wanted to, or as the German states will help me do here. And even so, the level of the schools wouldn't be the same. The transportation and the whole, this is the whole package isn't working.
But then there's a part of me that says as well, the grass is not always greener on the other side for everything. And somebody has to stay behind and make a change. What happens if everybody leaves? What's gonna happen? Are we just gonna let the country crumble? You have to, and this is what we were saying before as well. You know, you have to, you're the only person who can really change your own destiny. It's hard, and again, I feel weird. I feel bad for sort of saying, "Oh, you should stay or don't go or whatever," because you only have one life, and I can understand why a young Albanian person would want to leave the country and fulfill their potential in the best possible way somewhere else because they can't do it at home. But at the same time, I wish I could shake them and say, "Please, please, please stay, make a change, or at least go for 2 or 3 years and then come back." You know, but I can't say that. But I wish I could.
See, I went away. I'm here because the main reason was always my dream. I love the German culture. I've always loved it. I've learned the language since I was like, I don't know, in the 4th grade or something. But my parents was thinking exactly what you said. They were thinking like, oh, just go there because it's going to be better. It is going to be greener than ours. So for them, it was like the most rational solution to give me the best opportunities possible so I could have the best outcome possible. But I tell this to everybody in every Twitter space we have, every podcast we have, every discussion we have in the group. I say like, every day I'm with a loop like Sherlock Holmes in my hand and trying to find a reason to go back. People don't believe this. People think like I'm delusional or I'm just stupid. I do not understand it. Why would I do something like that? What the country has given me and stuff like that. But I do believe it is what you said. Somebody has to start. It has to start from somewhere.
If you don't see the opportunity, you have to make it sometimes. But again, it's easy for me to say that, you know, because why shouldn't someone take the option they want, which is easier, living abroad? But then that hurts because I would want to see this country fulfill its potential. But the way I look at it, you know, Albania is very young in its development, if you like. It's 31, 32 years since the end of communism. You look at Germany, the UK, which it's completely, there is a long history. There's still a long way to go here. And this is just a chapter. And I hope it will conclude and the next one will start and we'll see what happens. But I hope by the time my daughter is 18, she's not going to turn around and say, "Mummy, I want to go to the UK," because that would be heartbreaking, you know. But
that would be indeed heartbreaking.
But what I can do is try in the ways that I possibly can to make little changes here and there. That's all I can do.
Bit by bit. Gur bëhet kalaja, we say in Albanian. So, Alice, I thank you very, very much for talking to me this beautiful morning.
It was good. It was
fun.
And
I would love it to do it again sometime.
Yes. No problem, anytime.
Till then, I wish you all the best.
And you
have my support on writing and also hammering them, because that's what you do with the steel. So we need to hammer them as much as possible.
Yes.
And to shape them into the form we both seem to want for Albania.
Yes.
Until then, have a great time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.